It is a memoir of my life in East Africa. I got out to Kenya in the 60s and Tanzania, and have made since then 29 trips, some working for the government and some teaching at Dar and Nairobi. So Nina Sema Jambo, Ham Jambo, Rafiki Jambo. So, okay, I've invited 3 people here that I want to tell you about because they may be of interest. Louise Menke is from Denmark and has just come up from New York, where she was involved in the United Nations attempt at making a resolution on witchcraft and witchcraft accusation and prevention. Louise is co-director of WREN, which is Witchcraft and Human Rights Information Network. Tremendous person, very experienced, graduate of SOAS, and she has some pamphlets. And John, if we have a few minutes at the end, I'd like Louise just to have a chance to tell about WREN, which is a non-governmental organization working in West Africa and a bit in East Africa. John Bell has joined me. Dr. Bell is from Dartmouth. He's directs the Digital Humanities Division, which is an amazing place to me. They're helping all the faculty to move out masses of data, to get involved in the digital commons network, to get up on different clouds, and it's an innovative way. So, John, I wanted John Bell to be here. Franny Annett is my chief of research, chief boss in my institute, and terrific, and she's here to help answer questions too. So that's my way of introduction. This is an enormous field, and the literature is unbelievably complex. So let me just try to tie down some practical definition and try to bring this whole topic to the ground. A standard definition is like this: a belief. Witchcraft is a belief that some living people have unseen powers to do great evil. It is a belief. It is a belief system. It is also a social process. Based on these beliefs, a great deal of activity goes on in all sectors, in the family, in the community, at the nation state, and the community level. The basic distinction that is in the recent years come to be made, at least by social scientists, is to divide the witchcraft world between the secular and the sacred, or secular and religious. Now, the secular means that evidence, searching for evidence, dealing with concrete data, dealing with the assumption that that witchcraft is only a belief and may not exist out there. This is in contrast to the religious sector of the developed world, who believe in some supernatural dimension. This secular approach suggests that evidence, case studies, court material, police records, NGO reports, and so forth, concrete material, are the way to approach the witchcraft problem. And that the religious, as respectful as we need to be of the churches, they cloud the waters. They bring up improbability that witchcraft actually exists as a power. I'll come back to that, but let me just trace the enormity of this field. Witchcraft studies, when I got into it in the 60s and 70s, was tracing its ancestry to Evans Pritchard, the British Oxford professor who was working in the 1920s among the Zandi. Evans Pritchard is thought to be the grandfather of academic witchcraft. In America, he was competing with Clyde Kluckholm, who was working on Native American witchcraft and wrote classic books. The world of witchcraft, in my view, developed in 3 channels. It was first the academic literature of people who went to Africa, or African field workers in African scholarships, who wanted to look at it in a social science, in an academic social science way. The next whole truncheon of literature was the missionary scholarship. And this is enormous. It is mainly carried in the missionary literature and in their bulletins and in their communiques. But all the missionaries, I don't think there's been a missionary who hasn't written about witchcraft, at least in the Bantu part of the world. But the most important to me is the modern way that Africans are writing about Africans in their own media, in the press, on television, on how they, and that is an enormously important sector, because it is, it's no longer Wazungu Europeans preaching or talking and thinking about witchcraft. It's actually Africans doing the writing. And to that end, my interest has been in collecting. I've collected over 600 press reports, newspaper reports out of Eastern Africa, done some basic spreadsheet and computer analysis, very simple stuff, and began to come to some conclusions that if I have time, John, I'll share with you. Witchcraft is so perverse that it gets into psychology. Is there death by suggestion, for example, which you see in Australia with bone punning? Is death by suggestion is thought to be carried. I've seen 3 cases of death by suggestion triggered by witchcraft. Okay, let's get down to the modern age. Witchcraft, if you believe the German scholar write down Wolfgang Behring, and if you want to open, I think it's good, if you don't mind, John, please open that book that's there and take a look at, we can go along. The bibliography in the back is what I'm talking about now. This guy Behring is a German scholar, and he did an enormous analysis of witchcraft cases around the world, and has decided that serious witchcraft violence and witch hunting, the concrete side of witchcraft is witch hunting and witch killing. That witchcraft exists in 90 nations of the world today. After the Bantu-speaking Africa is one, but New Guinea, the Philippines, Indonesia, India, the Andean nations, Haiti, of course, all have a version of witchcraft, vengeance, looking for shame, looking for scapegoats that can all turn violent. So the issue around the world, and the UN is finally recognizing this, as Louise knows. Another indicator are the 20,000 papers at the National Museum in London that were simply cataloged if the title held the word witchcraft or sorcery. And of all this masses of academic writing that the London Museum has collected, you can rank order the frequencies by country. So this is another indicator how worldwide witchcraft is. It turns out that, again, Bantu Africa, but New Guinea comes in next. The witchcraft in New Guinea is serious. The Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, they all have. Now, these practices going on today are, they're kept sub rosa. The governments do not want to recognize this stuff. There's an enormous amount of violence, witchcraft-based violence in India, in the 67 tribal areas. Over 70 million people are following this, so it's endemic. My contention, and those of people with a evidential base, is that witchcraft, as believed in the world by does not exist. Witchcraft. This is going to get tough, so stick with me on this one. Is witchcraft in the mind only? Is it a phenomena of the human brain and of the human learning and the human process, but it's interior? Or are there unseen and unknown entities, tiny creatures, ghosts in trees, shades, a godlike figure sitting on an evil cloud? The academic world is about 20% in the secular side believe that witchcraft is a psychological process. And there's a whole lot of literature of how this has gone on. At Duke University for years, the paranormal people played around with witchcraft concepts in extrasensory perception and clairvoyance, and trying to see if some of these processes that are in witchcraft, that literature is failed. The journals were shut down. Mainline psychology, social psychology denounced Dr. Ryan as hard as he worked. Tens of thousands of cases he claimed were clairvoyance. Somebody dies and another person on the other side of a man is killed in combat and his mother wakes up. This process does not exist if you believe the modern social psychology. So the paranormal has been a parallel to witchcraft beliefs, and it is by definition, I think dismissible. What I came to in my own conclusions after about almost 40 years of working on this topic, that witchcraft does not exist as believed by the great majority of the third world. I make it akin to the thoughts of the 14th century that the earth was flat. The Flat Earth Society was a big mistake, and as soon as Magellan and other people managed to get around the world, they proved this. So it is a process, a belief system that is a big mistake. It doesn't mean that the outflow, and I could touch on it in the other panel, that the processes, the political outflow, the social impact, the economic impact of witchcraft isn't tremendous. So the book I want you to take away.
5 minutes. You're two-thirds. You're two-thirds of your time. Go ahead.
The takeaway message is that this subject is enormously worth studying because of the impact it has on African and other societies. That John brought this title and this to focus is, I think, a tremendous effort because it is understudied. The political impact is enormous. If you turn to that chapter in my book that's on politics, you will see that witchcraft is used in dozens of ways. It throws democracy flies out the window. If I can stand up and say, if you don't vote for me, my mganga, my healer over here, will get you tomorrow night. So witchcraft is given in plenty of cases in Kenya and Tanzania, particularly on this witchcraft intimidation. Witchcraft has an enormous economic impact. The cost of protective medicine, the cost of getting free. Almost all healers, traditional healers, are tremendous, and I've written about them a lot, but they do use witchcraft as a diagnosis. That you don't know why your baby died, it could have been Mchawi. And Mchawi may have been your neighbors, you see. And don't forget these Waganga, these local healers, know the community, they know the conflicts going on, and they're quite in a position. So there's an enormous misuse of diagnostic power using witchcraft, and that sets up things. Witchcraft from an economic point of view is there's a Berkeley prof, whose name is escaping, but he did tremendous work on the relation between witchcraft accusation and murder, which was going on in this case East Africa, and climate change. And he was able to chart the 75 or 80 murders in his area with the rise and fall of climate, of extreme weather. So flooding or drought triggers witchcraft, and in these societies at least. So there's enormous implication there. What I would like to do is to invite this panel and any of you who would be interested is to join us in a small study group that would go on for a year, and we would, on the topic, I would like to use the data or offer you the data, the press clippings, the 500 press clippings, and add press clippings from some of your countries and take a look at the modern witchcraft. I would like to invite you to use an archive. Franny, if you don't mind passing some of this material out. I only have 2 copies of this, but I've spent the last 3 years putting together an archive on witchcraft material. It's about 40% of my archive. This, if you can imagine, 18 boxes of material stretched from here to there. What's that say?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Okay, so I want to circulate this. This is an archive that's at Michigan State Big Africana Center. It's my personal archive. I had 28 research strips, and it tries to pull that material together. So let me just circulate this and make a note of it. And this will tell you about it. The archive is 16,000 text pages, 1,200 photographs, 7 films, 3 of my books. The one on witchcraft that you have in your lap is also there. And I'd invite you or your graduate students to use this. All that material is online, thanks to John Bell and others who have helped me. So I would love to, I'm retired, but I'd love to be, if you want, to serve as an informal advisor on this. I'll yield my time now, John, because I want Louise to have a chance.
You got it. Thank you for packing in so much. That was tremendous.